Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, I'm sure you recognize this face before you in very poor quality image. I'm sure you've seen this video before as well. This, if you don't know, is Leon Cooperman, I believe his name is. The quote-unquote crybaby millionaire. I'm sorry. Hedge fund billionaire from CNBC. He had a few things to say about what's going on with the GameStop stock. Let's listen to it, shall we?
The reason the market is doing what it's doing is people are sitting at home getting checks from the government, okay? And this fair share is a bullshit concept. It's just a way of attacking wealthy people, and, I think it's inappropriate. We all got to work together and pull together. The reason the market is doing what it's doing is people are sitting at home getting checks from the government, okay? And
Did you catch it?
Fair share is a bullshit concept. It's just a way of attacking.
I was wondering if you catch it the first time.
And, I think it's inappropriate. We all got to
Let's watch it again, shall we?
The reason the market is doing what it's doing is people are sitting at home getting checks from the government.
Right there.
And this fair share is a bullshit concept. It's just a way of attacking wealthy people, and, I think it's inappropriate. We all got to work together and pull together.
Very, very interesting. So it looks like whoever made this video decided to edit it and piece a couple of things together. How interesting. You know what I find very interesting is that the reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place gets even more pronounced by the fact that this video that has spread around just accentuates the point I want to bring. Now, did Leon Cooperman say these things? Yes, he did say these things, but it should be quite obvious to you that these things that he said, he did not say them one right after the other. If you watch the whole video, and I have, Leon Cooperman actually brings up a few good points. He talks about the Federal Reserve's involvement in the economy. He talks about Joe Biden and his policies. And you see, the first time he actually uses the term fair share is in talking about Joe Biden and his policies. Now, I don't really like to play videos on my videos. It's too much work. It's too much work. And I'm really, really quite lazy. Besides, it might be a good time to be a little more independent and self-reliant. Just a thought. But since many of you are lazy like I am, but I'm lazy in the good way, and many of you are probably not lazy in the good way, you're lazy in the bad way, I will give you the Cliff's Notes. Or was it Cliff Notes? I can't remember. I never used them. I always read the damn book. Or I didn't and faked it. The first time Leon Cooperman uses the term fair share is he says that capital gains tax and taxes on ordinary people are going to go up so that everyone can pay their fair share. His complaint about the idea of fair share is that it's an ambiguous term. That's something I have to agree on. I'm stumbling on my words. Just deal with it. I mean, after all, as far as if I know correctly, or if I understand what happened correctly, yes, you're going to have to deal with me stumbling on my words this entire video. Deal with it. If I understand it correctly, when the Koch brothers were siphoning oil from the Indian reserves, they decided to shave a little extra off the top to pay themselves, and they called it their fair share. But that's just a story. I wasn't there. And everything, when the timeline becomes long enough, becomes hearsay. So, Is fair share a bullshit concept? I agree with Mr. Cooperman. Why? What is fair? Well, life isn't fair. So what is fair? How can we define fair? That's such a subjective term. Now, by now you're thinking, oh, you're probably apologist. You're just defending the rich person. No. And I'll get to that in a little bit, dear frenemy. For that is the point of this video. But I want to bring another thing to light that Mr. Cooperman says in his interview with CNBC. You see, he says that he wouldn't mind working 50% for the government and 50% for himself. Now, do I believe him? No. Do I believe you? No. Are you starting to get the idea? But let's take him at his word. Working 50% for the government and 50% for himself. That seems a fairly noble idea, doesn't it? But let's talk about that for a second. You see, I always find it interesting if one person invests $15,000 into something, another person invests $150,000 in something. Well, obviously, the person with $150,000 invested has more to lose, don't they? Because the numbers are so simple. Or are they? Well, what about if that person who invested their $15,000, what if that $15,000 was 95% of that person's total assets, and the other person, person B, that $150,000 was 5% of their total assets? Now who's got more to lose? But on the flip side, let's talk about Mr. Cooperman here, because nature abhors a vacuum. And let's be honest with ourselves, there is a part of us that hate rich people just because of the fact that nature abhors a vacuum. Oh, but Vianticus, how is there a vacuum? Well, you see, dear frenemy, in order for there to be a high concentration of something, there typically has to be a vacuum at the center, a very powerful one that doesn't go away by simply being filled like everything else does. Things like a black hole. So, is it natural for us to hate those that are wealthy? Sure. But should we treat them fairly or unfairly? Oh, what is fair and what is unfair? You know, for many people, fair is just what makes me feel good. And damn the other person. Much like the editing of this video. Rich people, poor people. Human beings are such interesting creatures. Let's say this person, Mr. Cooperman, is talking from ill intent. Do I know? Not really. Do I care? Not really. I'm more interested in people in general. But let's say he is speaking of from ill intent. Well, what about you, dear frenemy? If you were in the same position, would you be saying the same things? Would you also be saying such things from ill intent? Because after all, it's okay if I do it. But if somebody else does it, well, then it depends on whether or not I like them. And realistically, we can say that for ourselves now, can't we? It's okay if I do it if I like myself, but if I don't like myself, then it's not okay if I do it. What's fair? What's not? Are we really so right and wrong? Are we really so better and worse than anybody else? Or are we all just human? Because you see, dear friend of me, from my perspective, the only real difference between a person with a lot of money and a person with a little amount of money is that the person with a lot of money just has more resources with which to spread their stupidity across the world.